charts, PowerPoints. I think Mike had one or two. I don't think Robin has, and Charles has a few. So we're going to kick this thing off. Each one will take a few minutes. And
we have a legal minute first.
I'm sorry, what?
You have a legal minute.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Kathy's got a legal minute.
Okay, so if you're a TREIA member and you've been on these meetings before, you know that if you have a legal question, you're welcome to send it to us, and you can get that question answered for free without having to pay the hourly rate, as long as you're willing to share it with 100 of your closest friends. So the question that I got this month is about the governor's order on evictions. And I'm sharing it on your screen here. If you can see, this is our latest order. This order is long, but I'm going to cut to the chase for you. It does two things. Number one, in North Carolina, you cannot evict your tenants right now for reasons of late payment or non-payment. This order is good, as you can see right here, through June 20th. It has been extended already a few times. It is anticipated that it will be extended again. So you cannot evict, you can't charge late fees, you can't put them out of their homes during this time now through June 20th, as well as all late fees are waived. What does this mean? It doesn't mean they don't ever have to pay you rent. They eventually have to pay you rent, and if they don't, you can evict them. There are some rules. You cannot add late fees and penalties. You'll give them a 6-month period to pay their arrearages. What this also does is for commercial evictions. The same restrictions apply in North Carolina right now with the exact same provisions for commercial evictions. Now, here's an important thing, because this particular person who asked me the question wanted to do an eviction because they needed to move back in their home. They were selling their second home. They needed to move back into the home. The tenant would not leave. The tenant was not delinquent in rent. So as you see here, in E, nothing in this order affects evictions for reasons other than late payment. So in the case of the person who asked the question, you can evict for that reason. It does say here, you're strongly encouraged to work with tenants to the best of their abilities to avoid evictions in light of COVID. But the bottom line is, if that eviction is not for non-payment, you can evict that tenant. Again, just because rent is waived, it does have to eventually be paid. But then you can see the rest of that order there. It's kind of long. That's why I've highlighted these provisions here that we wanted to talk about. But the question, to answer the question that was asked, evictions can be done for reasons other than non-payment. So again, if you have a legal question you would like answered at our July meeting, you can email that question to Kathy, Kathie, at TREIA.com, and it will be answered. And with that, we will turn it over to Robert Mohan.
Hello, everybody. I'm assuming you can hear me all right. Let me get my screen ready. Can you see my slides?
Yep.
Outstanding. Surprise, surprise, surprise. It is pandemic time. Who saw this thing coming? It's a crazy world post-corona. Look at this. We now have masks. We have whole new language, social distancing. Who even thought that up? Now here we are. But interestingly, we have real estate to deal with. What's the future going to hold? Now, I will tell you that I'm not an accountant, an attorney, or otherwise any kind of professional of any sort. If you need professional help or mental counseling, you should seek that elsewhere. These opinions tonight are mine and not necessarily those of TREIA. In fact, I like to hang out with smart people. You'll see Steve Forbes there with me, and I'm applauding you for hanging out with smart people here tonight. So as for me, my background, so you know where I'm coming from, is I have a day job. I still work, but I get to work from home. It's fantastic, and you should try it if you haven't already. I have done lease options in the past, but my preference is to buy and hold because I'm all about me some passive income. I don't like having to show up places for work. I like money just to roll in. And yes, I even like stocks and bonds. So hopefully I've got some friends here in the crowd. Well, let's face it. There have been some surprises, and here are some recent numbers just from yesterday. The jobs In May of 2020 versus 2019, you'll see on your screen there that there have been losses in all sectors. 12% overall, unless you lost your job, and then it's 100%. It's awful. A lot of people are hurting. Look at that, 37% of the restaurant jobs lost. 12% in retail, 9% in manufacturing and business services. That is two separate categories. It's just 9%, and I wanted to fit together on one line. Same on the healthcare and government at 6%. And look at that, finance has only had a 2% loss. Interesting. Now, I think people are still going to want to eat out, and I think most of those restaurant jobs will come back. But what about the rest of those jobs? Now, look at this from the tenants that you have in your rental properties. If you're not sure what they do, go back and look at your applications and say, how many of my tenants are in restaurants? Are they hurting? Are their jobs gone forever? Are their jobs going to take 2 years to come back? Who knows? Are my tenants in retail? With e-commerce, who knows if that's coming back at all? Are they manufacturing or business services? Maybe 1 in 10 were affected. Healthcare, government, those will probably recover. And finance, well, it looks like they were hardly touched at all. So think about this in terms of your tenants, those who are paying you rent. What is this doing to their incomes? So Joe Davis works at Vanguard. He is the stock and bond Vanguard, the Vanguard group, that one, the big one. He says, regarding the recovery, we have seen here the shortest and sharpest recession ever. Some will talk about the V curve, where it went way down. I guess as you guys are looking at it, it went down and then it went up again when we started reopening. But I think he's right. The effects will linger for years. We're going to feel this for a while. But one thing he said that I've really been thinking about since I heard this yesterday is look for the pandemic to accelerate trends that were already in place. Like I mentioned, e-commerce. How many people in retail are now not going to be hired back? How many people in a given restaurant maybe will decide not to open up again for full dining room ever? Maybe they're going to do takeout, or maybe they went out of business. Now, restaurant people, maybe they can get a job elsewhere if it's available. But hospitality, that's going to be a tough one to recover from. So thinking back to 2008, here are some of the lessons that I learned. Back then, I managed my own properties, and maybe this is some of you, I worried about my marketing. On Saturday morning, I worried, I didn't get enough calls on Friday. Did I put those bandit signs out on the right corners? Were they facing the right way? Should I put one over here? Should I put one at all 4 corners? Should I put 2 together? I just worried about the marketing. I took all the calls. I blew all kinds of time for showing. I had to keep up with the laws. It was a lot of work. Does anybody else feel this? I had to worry if they were going to pay. And then when they did not pay, I had to worry when I was going to file or serve them or pay or quit. Fool with all that stuff. Do I have the right paperwork? Is it the current edition? I had to spend time checking them in, listening to the complaints, checking them out, listening to the complaints, and then arguing about repairs and then hiring and firing the vendors. Wow, that's a lot of work. And I realized in 2008, I've got all these other things to worry about too. Do I really want to worry about this as well? So I changed what I was doing as a result of that particular crisis in 2008. And some will say, what is your pivot plan? Maybe you've heard that recently. Well, my pivot plan back then was to hire a manager to do all this stuff for me. And my job is to manage them and watch for the money to show up. And I can tell you, when you stack it all up together on a screen, all this stuff on the left was a big bunch of headaches that I did. And now I do this stuff that's way less on the right. And man, this is what it feels like. So that crisis back then taught me to focus on what I did best and let those other things go. And to use the words of Robin, who we'll talk in a moment, those weren't all minimum wage activities, but for me, they were like my minimum wage activities. They were things I was not good at, and they caused me pain. And so I got away from that and did the things that really paid off for me. So as far as the corona now, what should we do going forward? My thoughts are that I think you should have cash on hand for opportunities. If you're not sure where to put it, look at some of these online banks or CDs. They pay a lot more than the local bank, but don't overlook talking to your local bank because they're the ones that may also make loans for you or lines of credit. Be friendly with people that have money. I mentioned lines of credit. If you don't have them, look at setting them up, whether it's a home equity line of credit or now a line of credit on a paid off rental property, which those are existing again. You may consider, if you have a big wad of cash, to do some hard money loans. Just some considerations for your cash. Next, I would say have patience with yourself and with others. People are edgy, a little bit crazy lately, and to be quite frank, I've been a little edgy lately, and I have to have patience with myself, and thank goodness my wife is very patient, and hopefully your family is too. I think all this time on Zoom and all these technologies have made us go crazy, and I think you need a daily tech diet. Consider family time or even a hobby. I've got a kid up there playing with a puzzle. It looks like Legos. Consider getting away from the technology and doing something where you have to go outside or you physically touch something. I think that's already made a difference in me and my mental well-being with all this online technology. Recheck your long-term goals. Probably whatever's gone on, it's probably not going to change your long-term goals. You just may need to go back and relook at those again and say, yes, this is what I need to focus on. And if your counsel advises you to adjust on the short term, maybe do it. But otherwise, just have patience and be generous toward others. Whether it's people you know, people you interact with, people in the store that maybe aren't observing the 6-foot thing, just be patient and generous with folks. I think it's going to help you go a long way. And until then, I'm going to keep working my day job, buying and holding, working on passive income, and watching my stocks and bonds. Kathy, back to you.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Yeah, let me pick it up. Robert, thank you so much. That was really cool. Good advice. And I particularly like the thing of having some patience and some generosity with other people because tempers are tending to get short nowadays. Mike Jack is going to talk to us next. And Mike, I suspect that Robert maybe stole some of your thunder, but give us some advice about what you've been doing or what you did back 10, 12 years ago and what you're doing now and what folks ought to be looking at. All right, Mike, take it away.
All right, well, thank you, Chuck. And thanks, Robert. You actually, while I was listening to you talk about it, reminded me of a couple things and pointed a few things out to me, which is another reason why, attending these meetings and being part of TREIA is so valuable, is coming together and hearing from other people who have been through this and have different ideas. Everyone's seeing different perspectives from things. Rob has been around for a while. I've been around for a while. And like Chuck said, I've been in real estate for more years than I care to admit. And I heard a national speaker once a few years back say, I've been in for more than a quarter of a century. So every year after that doesn't matter. So for me, I'm the same thing. I've been in for way more than a quarter of a century. And I started out like most people did. I was interested in real estate. I picked up a rental property and then I bought a property to renovate and I moved into it myself. That was all back in 1991 time frame. So I guess it is 30 plus years now for me. And I struggled. I did those first couple of deals and then I struggled for a while because I thought, real estate's easy. I bought a rental property and then I fixed up a property. Well, I stumbled into them and did them and I got lucky. And I started struggling to try to find more information about real estate. And at the time, we did not have a REIA here in Minnesota. So I went and got my real estate license in 1991. I went and got my real estate license. Thought that's what I needed because I needed the education, which was a huge help for me because it did teach me a whole nother aspect of real estate. And I learned so much from being involved in that as being a realtor. And I went full time. So then during that time, I was a realtor, and then I did subcontracting work, and I did everything I could because I had quit my corporate job back in 1991. I quit that, and I've been in real estate ever since. And I had to make it work, and I was bound and determined to make it work. And the more I had to make it work, the more hungry I got, and the more I just kept diving in, and I figured it out. And in 1997, I have been full-time doing since 1997. So I stopped doing the real estate as a real estate agent for income. And basically, so 1997 is when I got out of the rat race. My passive income from my rental properties and everything else covered all my expenses, like Robert Kiyosaki and the cash flow, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I got out of the rat race in 1997, and then I just started accelerating from there, and I started building up. Then I went and got my real estate brokerage because I saw opportunities, and one of the opportunities was there was a lot of real estate investors who it was really hard for real estate investors who also had real estate licenses to find a broker that understood the investor side. Well, I filled that niche. So every time I saw something, I filled that niche. And by 2000, so then 2002, I'm going to all these REIA, or not REIAs, but investor trainings. Like I went to Robert Thompson's, I went to one of our speakers, I went to everybody I could find. And one of the common threads was, and I learned from everyone, all that stuff, all the great information, they say, go back to your REIA. And I'm like, well, what's a REIA? Your local real estate investors association. I'm like, well, we don't have one in my area in Minnesota. So I actually I didn't start one on purpose, but I started networking with a few people in 2002, and that grew into a REIA. So in 2002, we started that. And then by 2008, we had a pretty large REIA, especially for that time frame, it had grown into a REIA. So by 2008, when the market crashed last time, I was a real estate broker. I had a property management company. From managing my own properties, I started managing other people's properties. So the real estate broker, property management, I was doing my own rehab. We were doing our own rehabs, and I was also doing trustee servicing. So I had like 4 different companies, each one of them. And here's the interesting thing is each one of those businesses, I basically modeled after someone else's system. And I took their system and I let that system run. So it freed me up to continue to do the real estate, which is my passion. So I was still buying and selling and renting and, negotiating and just having fun with real estate. Well, each one of those businesses, because I had to hire an employee, but the systems were running and they weren't large businesses. So that one employee could run the business itself by themselves. And what I would do then is I would take part of their time and help to run MinREIA, because MinREIA, the Real Estate Investor Association, was extremely time intensive. And I'll put on my screen, this is our company, MinREIA. So it was extremely time intensive for me to run that. But everything else that I was writing was all systemized. But nobody had ever really systemized the REIA. And so in 2008, when the real estate market crashed, I was losing an empire. I had 40 plus rental, well, they weren't even rental properties. They were all contract for deed, cash flowing properties, because I wasn't a typical landlord. I was the financier. So I was buying them and then selling them all on contract for deeds, lease options, whatever. Well, that was all struggling. Everything else was just tumbling and crumbling down below me and underneath me. So over about a 2-year period, I went through a pretty rough time trying to struggle and get through all that. And I was bound and determined to stay in real estate. And like so many other people, they got out of real estate, went back to the corporate world just to survive. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay the course. But one of the things that was really struggling is I ended up closing down the brokerage, the property management company, the trustee servicing. I just shut it all down and lay off all my employees. And I almost shut down MinREIA. But what happened was we had built over the course of the several years coming up to that point, we'd built a community of investors and we were each other's support group. So now so I was almost like going to an AA meeting or something where we were there to support each other and encourage each other and listen to their sob stories and come up with ideas to help people get out of these troubled properties, because a lot of these properties we had were upside down. And we became our own support group. And I'm like, I can't let MinREIA go. I have to figure out a way to make it work. But it was too much for me to do it on my own. So in 2009 and 10, I had all these ideas where I could systemize running a rehab, but I never did it before. So I went and took that time now that I cleaned up my inventory. I got rid of most of that stuff, got the ones that I could keep, kept them cash flowing, and I got, stable. And then that's when I started working on building a system for MinRia. And over the next couple of years, MinRia started growing again, and our attendance was going phenomenal. And in 2011, we had one of the national speakers come through, and they said, Mike, what's going on here? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm not seeing this anywhere in the country. You told me you were going to have 150 people. Everybody tells me they're going to have 150 people at a meeting, and I show up and there's 30 people. You told me you're going to have 150, and you had 175. This was, and I see you here doing all this by yourself. What's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about, because I just thought that was normal what I was doing, but apparently it wasn't. And so talking to her after a while, she realized the thing was I built the system that systemized everything for running all the back end administrative stuff, which allowed me the time to work on the fun stuff and working with the members and the deals. Well, she's like, I want that for us. And that was up in Michigan. So that was Wendy Patton. And I'm like, well, no, sorry, it doesn't work like that. I just spent 2 years building it. And she's like, well, give me a copy of it. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. And she just would not take no. So over a year, she kept pounding me and kept pushing me. And I worked on it. And I finally built the system so I could duplicate it. Well, then I had a year later, another national speaker, Vina, came through and said basically the exact same thing. She says, other RIAs need this. I'm like, okay, well, let's see. Well, the very next RIA I talked to happened to be you guys. It was TREIA. And Chuck was one of them, and a couple of the other people. They're like, well, let's give it a try. So if it wasn't for you guys, I probably still wouldn't have this system, because it was Wendy, it was Vina, and then it was TREIA are the ones that gave me the encouragement to keep doing this, right? So I then started building the system, and now we support over 70 RIAs around the country. And our whole goal is to help members survive through these tough times and build systems. So that's where, like on the TREIA site, and I don't know if you guys are using them, but this is one of the biggest things right now. And I've been hearing from our members and from myself personally, who are still actively doing real estate. If you watch the property leads, you can tell. So if you're just sitting back there and not paying attention to what's going on in the real estate, and you're just listening to all the news media, and you think that the world's coming in and you're watching the riots and everything else, well, you're probably missing the fact that real estate is actually going gangbusters right now. There was a couple months where we all were nervous about it and we were concerned, but there's a lot of differences from 2008 to this time. There's also some similarities, but the tools that we have built for you guys through TREIA is what's going to help you guys get through all this. And you can see inventory is selling. I mean, if you're looking on the screen right now, there's some properties right here just on the TREIA's website that are pending. One of your members had an open house. It was today. They had an open house at 11. I don't know what the results were, but somebody had an open house today. So these are just the type of tools that we've been helping to build for you guys to get through that. And that was all because of me trying to survive myself and then getting the support from my members and also from you guys. And one of the biggest supporters, and somebody I've been meaning to reach out to for a little while, and I unfortunately haven't taken the time, and I regret that, but she's on right now, and that's Robin. And that is something else. I mean, if you guys are struggling right now because of different things, reach out and get some support. And for me, it was Robin Thompson. She's the one that told me to keep going through this whole mess, because she was there when I was going downhill. So if anybody knows my story, there's nobody that knows it better than Robin Thompson. And if it wasn't for her, I would not be here today talking to you guys if it wasn't for Robin Thompson and a few other people like Robin. But she was the biggest influence to me, because she's the one that and she didn't do anything for me other than encourage me. And she gave me a helping hand every now and then when I absolutely needed it. But she's the one that really had faith in me and didn't let me get down on myself. So for that, I just want to say thank you, Robin, for being there for me then. And now I'm hoping that I'm the one that is giving back, and I can help to be here for you guys as we're going through this time. And I could talk for hours about lessons that I've learned and lessons that I'm still learning. still constantly change. The one big thing, as I will say, is you need to be okay with change, because real estate in over 30 years has changed so many times, and we're going through another change right now. Right, the way we're going to be doing real estate, I think, over the next couple of years is going to be different than we've been doing it the last 2-3 years. Right, but it's nothing new to me. And I've been through these cycles a couple times now, so I know how to handle it. And you need to, as members, need to follow the people that have been through these different time frames and be willing to change and see when something not working, see what somebody else is doing that is working, and learn from them. And that's one of the biggest benefits of being a member of TREIA, is being there for that. So with that, I'll turn it back to Chuck.
Okay, let's see. Figure out. Yeah, I'm still on. Okay. Hey, Mike, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. I appreciate that. By the way, for those of you that don't know, Mike in the TREIA website has incorporated the property. What do you call it, Mike?
The property leads, property features,
the
the websites.
Property listings. So be sure to look at those and take advantage of those if you're looking to buy property or if you've got property to sell. Take a look at that. It's exclusive for TREIA members. Mike alluded to Robin Thompson being kind of a guiding light for him. I have been to, I don't know how many of Robin's boot camps. I've heard her speak at numerous events, and I am just in total awe of her story. Won't go into it tonight, but she has a wonderful story to tell about how she got involved in real estate and then became a national speaker. She has, and I'm sure she's got a number, but I would venture to say hundreds of thousands of people have learned real estate investing from her. She's just a marvelous person and got a heart of gold. And I'm just so saddened that we had scheduled her to come and do a live event next month at our main meeting. And she and I talked a week or so ago and made the hard decision that we're going to postpone her until January because of the governor's order that we can't have mass meetings. And it was a painful, hard decision to make, but we just had to do it. And just because you got to see her in person. The Zoom meeting just doesn't do it for her. She has a 90-minute meeting, and then she follows that up with a 2-day weekend seminar that's just outstanding. A lot of you folks have heard Robin speak before. Those of you that have not, I cannot emphasize strongly enough that you really need to come and listen to her. So with that, Robin, you can mail your check to me anytime. Let me turn it over, and good to hear from you, sweetie. Go ahead.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Robin Thompson. I've been rehabbing houses. I hate to say this, guys. It's been 22 years now. 440 of them later, here we are tonight. So let's just say I was doing quite a bit of rehabbing before 2008 hit. For those of you that don't know me, I had done most of my properties in my first 10 years of investing up in Waterbury, Connecticut, and New England. High property taxes, very cold winters. So I had decided to sell all that stuff off and move down to Orlando, which I did early in 2007. Got down there to the Sunshine State, to the promised land where houses go up $1,000 a week in appreciation, and thought, wow, I went from a city that had zero appreciation for 10 years and thought I was going to go make the easy money in the buy and hold game. The minute I got to Orlando, about 2 months later, had not bought my first rehab yet, was still trying to learn the market. The market went to crap, and the next thing you know, 2008 hit us like a freight train, and the properties in Florida were worth half what they were just 6 months prior. So I sat through 2008, 9, 10, and 11, and I did not buy any houses because I couldn't get my arms around it because prices were all over the place, and foreclosures to the left and foreclosures to the right. When the market finally hit the bottom in 2011, I went ahead and started rehabbing like crazy. And I also decided to buy a very large portfolio of keeper properties. What I learned before the recession was I had 30 some Section 8 rentals, which gave me nothing but grief and indigestion. So I sold those 30 some low end Section 8 messes, got out of that, and swore I'd never have tenants again because I didn't make any money on that mess. After the recession, I bought some rental properties, broke my own rules, but I bought them on golf course communities and places that would appreciate in the highest and best school districts. And so I have kept those those properties and left them go ahead and pay themselves off. So I did most of them with seller financing at 0% interest. What I can tell you, the tenants have pretty much paid for them. They didn't make a whole lot in cash flow, but they built a massive amount of equity since 2011. And I have been since 2018 and 19 exchanging those through 1031 exchanges into the vacation rental market in Branson, Missouri, as well as Florida. So obviously Corona-19 threw a monkey wrench in a lot of things for me, but it was, you know, I was speaking about 180 to 200 days a year going into March when the virus took its toll. I can tell you I've very much enjoyed the last 3 months of being home, and it's given me a lot of time to think about all the learning lessons of the last 22 years and really understand where we are right now and how much different this pandemic is than 2008. So I took a bunch of notes. I didn't prepare fancy slides like the rest of the guys, but let me just go over some of the lessons that I think y'all need to learn that are Robin's gut instincts, if you will. When 2008 hit, I watched a lot of my students, thousands of them, as well as several of my very high-end mentors get wiped out financially and lose everything. I did not. And what I was able to determine is the reason I didn't, I have always had some core beliefs, which I want to give those 4 to you tonight, and I think you need to take this close to heart. One of the things that I learned a long time ago is build reserves, reserves, reserves. So I'm one that when I buy a house and I fix it up and I sell it and flip that thing and make $25,000 or $30,000, I usually take $4,000 or $5,000 and pack that away in what's called a reserve bucket. And a reserve bucket means it's cash and you hold on to it and you don't spend it. And if you use that money to buy another house, that's not reserves, that's working capital. So over the last 12 years since 2008, watching all my friends go upside down financially, I've built up very large cash reserves because I kind of figured there'd be another rainy day in this world. I didn't think it was going to be a pandemic. I thought it was going to be another recession. But what I can tell you, my reserves coming into this mess that started in March were very deep. Now, what that gave me the ability to do is ride this storm out knowing that I don't need the PPP money. I don't need the stimulus check. I don't need any free handout from anybody, and my life doesn't depend on any of that to pay for groceries. What I can tell you is I think all of you need to take, when you profit in real estate, whether you're a realtor and you sell a house, or you flip like I do and you rehab, or your tenant pays the rental check, I think you need to take a little bit of that money every time you get a check and pack it away into reserves and hold on to it like a little squirrel getting ready for winter. Because if you do that, when a pandemic comes along, you're able to make your bills for months and months and months, whether anything comes in or not, and whether your tenants pay or not. And I think that's really important. Is the problem in America today is we don't save money anymore. We spend everything we make as a nation. And I think we need to stop that and be a little bit mature about our lives. So reserves, reserves is the first thing. The second thing I think is important for you to learn, which makes me very different than a lot of the people that are in this world, is I had very low loan to value ratios when the recession hit, and I had even lower loan to value ratios when the pandemic hit. And what that means, loan to value means what you owe on the property versus what it's worth. I'm a big fan of when students buy houses that they buy them at 70 cents on the dollar. And that means to buy it, fix it up. So I don't ever want you to leverage a house of 90% of what it's worth or 95% of what it's worth, because when a pandemic hits or a recession, it ends up you are in a negative equity position. So I think always trying to pay the house down, getting it paid for, not owing a whole lot on the house, that's important to you. So you constantly want to make your houses work hard for you and pay them off. So let me give you an example of that. I'm in the vacation rental scene in Branson, Missouri. Vacation rentals, Airbnb, HomeAway, VRBO is the wave of the future. Those properties, non-pandemic, the amount of bookings that you get for vacation after you pay all your expenses and your taxes and insurance, those houses, you can literally take the profits off of them and get a house paid for in 6 years. That's a really fast way to pay the house down. If you take all the extra money that the properties throw and you put it to your mortgage, you can literally pay them off really, really fast. So once the houses are paid for, you can't lose them. And so I'm a big fan of taking extra cash flow and throwing it to principal, because that compound interest savings to you really builds your piggy bank up quick. So that's number 2. The third one I would tell you is don't live off your cash flow. And I see so many students do this. They start out buying rental properties, and what they do is they get each house throwing $300 or $400 a month. And so when they get 10 houses, they're like, woohoo, I'm making $4,000 or $5,000 extra money every month. Well, they up their lifestyle. They up the car they drive. They get bigger car payments. They up the price of the house that they buy to live in. And then what happens is they have bigger mortgage payments. So they're living off the cash flow and using that to feed the lifestyle with no thoughts of a roof aging out, or hot water tanks need to be replaced, or HVAC system. I had one replaced today. Of that kind of stuff happening. And so what happens is they never get the house paid down. And, you know, they'll refinance and pull the equity out. So I don't want you to do that, which is number 4. Once you do pay a house down, leave it alone. Don't go in there pulling equity out of a house and refinancing it and starting the interest clock all over again. And leave the house work hard for itself. Let it get itself paid for. Once they're paid for, you don't have to work anymore. And, you know, going into this pandemic, I can tell you, I was just as scared as the next person. You know, right around March 15th, when they announced that this was going to be bad and it was going to be long and it could go on for years, I took 3 of the houses I had paid for and put them up for sale, and I had no idea if they would sell or not. The good news is, in this pandemic, the houses still sold. The reason this is different than 2008 is our inventory of what's available for sale is extremely low right now. So the 3 houses I put up for sale, I put them all up at market value. I thought, you know, if one of them sells and I can bring in $200,000 or $300,000 cash and ride this out for a year or 2, I'll be good. And I was fortunate. All 3 of my houses sold, and all 3 of them actually closed. I figure when all 3 went under deposit, maybe I'd get lucky and one person would get their mortgage through. What I've learned from this pandemic is the interest rates were really low. That kept the buyers buying. The other thing I learned is, because my houses were empty, they were rehabs. They weren't tenants in them. They were rehab properties. What I learned is the people wanted to look at them because it was safer to look at a house that was vacant than to look at a house that was being owner occupied. So what I had all my realtors do is give them the lockbox code and let the buyers go alone. So unsupervised. And because the buyers could take their time, they could look at all the amenities, they could look at all the upgrades. All 3 of mine went under deposit really quickly. And so my advice to a lot of you is the rehab market worked really, really well during the pandemic, especially if you're entry-level houses and staying under, you know, the high-end $500,000 number. I can tell you the rehab business was strong through this pandemic. And it was also strong in the recession, especially first-time buyers. Just as many first-time buyers bought in 2008, 9, and 10 as they do any other time. FHA and VA loans stay strong because anybody can go from an apartment to their first house. And so those would just be some of the things I've learned across these last 2 rough times, if you will. I hope some of that was knowledgeable for all you folks. The only thing I can tell you, the scariest thing for me was my vacation rentals did have about $80,000 worth of cancellations for the month of March, April, and May. The good news is now that the virus seems to have subsided and a lot of the states are opening up, I can tell you those numbers have all coming back really, really strong, and they're coming back stronger than hotel numbers. So I guess from a travel perspective, the vacation rental and the Airbnb stuff has been really strong for me. So, and I still think it's a good investment and a good thing for everybody to learn. So Chuck, that's all I got.
Thank you so much, Robin. I will remind everyone that in the meeting that if you have any questions for any of the 3 speakers who just spoke, or our speaker who's going to speak right now, please send them in the chat box there, and we'll ask them. Our final speaker is the Wake County Register of Deeds, Charles Gilliam. Charles is a graduate of University of North Carolina at Greensboro with an MBA, and undergraduate from UNC Chapel Hill, and a Juris Doctor, which means he's an attorney, from Michigan State. He's been an attorney for 38 years. He has been our Register of Deeds here for the last couple years. He was a former district court judge in Wake County, and prior to that, he taught legal classes at North Carolina State University. He also, interestingly, was a European lawyer living in Europe for a time. He's married with 2 children who are both graduates of Wake County Public Schools, and both graduated from college majoring in computer science. He likes to grow vegetables and flowers. So without further ado, here's our Wake County Register of Deeds with some statistics for your edification, Charles Gilliam.
Hello, everybody. Are you able to see my slides on the screen?
Hold on, Charles. I'm trying to get there.
Yes, we can see.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's great. I'm also a North Carolina licensed real estate broker. I've never done that for a living, but I've been a real estate broker since 1974, an attorney at law since 1982. For 3-some years in the 70s, I was a branch manager of a savings and loan back when we had savings and loans, so that has to do with real estate. My only real estate investments are timberlands. I don't have the kind of real estate investments that you guys have. So our office has not shut down. We're continuing to operate as we normally do. Half of our business is recording legal documents, and the other half is vital records. We won't be talking about vital records today. In early 2019, I devised and tested 2 disaster recovery plans. One was for data recovery, such as what happens if your servers are hit, which is what happened to Durham County March of this year when that Russian virus knocked out their servers and they were out for a while. And the other was human recovery. And I always used to say when people would ask, well, why are you doing a human recovery disaster recovery plan? I said, well, I don't know what'll happen. Maybe the Spanish flu will hit the courthouse. And I wasn't really thinking the Spanish flu would hit the courthouse. That was just something I said, but it turned out it was sort of true. So on March the 6th, 2020, I decided to implement the Human Disaster Recovery Plan. And that involves that most of the recording and indexing staff goes home. And we have some recording staff in the office to handle mail. The last day that all the staff were in the office was Friday, March the 13th. The next week, they iteratively went home. We kept some people in reserve, and by Wednesday, March the 18th, we knew that everything was good. And we have, say, 13 to 18 people at home now doing recording from there. So we do not need the office anymore. If the virus were to hit the courthouse and everybody were to become sick of virus, the people at home are safe. 98% of our deeds and deeds of trust are currently being e-recorded. Before the current situation, it was 90%. So it was, it was mainly that always. And 90% of all instruments are e-recorded, and the previous state was about 80%. Friday, March 27th was the last day that we allowed people to physically come into our office. Right now, only staff are physically in the office. So what I have is a situation where we operate in an envelope, I call it, or sometimes I call it a bubble. We come in here, you wash your hands, you take your temperature, and then you stay behind our locked doors. And that way we're safe from getting the flu and we can continue to provide services. And we are providing all of our services, both vital records, deaths, marriages, births, all that paperwork, as well as recording legal documents. If something were to happen and we were to get flu, those of us who are in the office, that's okay. We would just go home. We would self-quarantine, no problem. Usually when you get the flu, nothing bad happens, but even if something bad does happen, the people who are at home, they are not impacted. So they're not going to get the flu. Now I'm going to talk about some real estate data. The most important data is the last two slides. So you're going to have to stay awake for the last two slides. And I'm going to give you a roadmap. We got 5 topics: dollar values, medians, deed velocity, lending velocity, and the last 2 slides are what is happening so far in June. What we're going to do for each of these topics, we're going to sort of drill down in a logical way. And all the information that I have here, I have published in some form except the last 2 slides. No one knows the last 2 slides except me and a reporter that I told today at the Triangle Business Journal, and in a few minutes you will know it. This particular table shows the aggregate value of Wake County real estate transactions in dollars by month for 4 years. So the yellow bar is 2020, and you can see that when the restrictions hit from the governor on March 17th, the yellow bar dropped down in April and it dropped down in May. Dollar values are always more volatile than deed velocity. You'll see that deed velocity is also down, but it's not as dramatic. The ups and the downs on these charts, always dollars more so than deeds. Now, this drills down a bit more. This is by year, and this shows the same total dollar values as we had before. If you were to take all those red lines and add them up, it would add up to the 2019 column that we have here. So it shows that about $15 billion worth of property changed hands in Wake County in 2019, of which 97% of the transactions were $1 million or less, and then the orange box are the transactions that were between 1 and 30 million, and then the gray is more than 30 million. You can see that the blue box over these last 6 years, the blue column is up pretty steadily. The other 2 colors jump up and down, and they mainly jump up. Now we'll drill some more. This is this year by month. Same thing, same colors, just by month. So we can see what happened in April and May, break that down. The high value stuff just collapsed. And I don't know why it collapsed. I know that it did. I can prove that it did, but I don't know why. Maybe some of you have some idea why that collapsed. The blue part, the under a million, is also down, but not as much as the gray and the orange. Now let's drill down some more, and we drill down into May. So here what I'm doing is I'm comparing May, which is the red, to the first quarter. And what we've got here is I have $50,000 price bands. This is the market under $1 million. So if you look at the previous chart, that would be the blue part. The median price in Wake County in 2019 was $303,000. The median price in the first quarter 2020 was $310,000. So we can just call that 300,000. So if you look at the chart that we have, the ones where the red bar up at the top, it says there were 340 transactions. And then the one next to it, it says there are 325 transactions. The median sort of falls between those two price ranges on the graph. And what this data shows is that property that is selling above the median is holding up pretty well. Property that is selling below the median, in some of these columns it's up, and some it's about the same, and some of it's down. So the stronger part of the market is actually in the higher end. Now, of course, this is the higher end up to $1 million maximum. If we look here, no properties are transferring that are 25 million or 50 million or 75 million. You know, office parks and skyscrapers and whatnot just are not moving at all. But just for normal property, it's the high end that's doing the best. So the next topic where we have some data, this is the median prices. And this is some old information that's already been published, but just for background, refresh our memory. This shows what the median prices have been in Wake County over the last few years. Nice steady growth, up to $303,000 in 2019. And then we drill down, and now we'll do it by month for 2020. And what you see here is that in April and May, the median price was a little bit higher than it had been, and that's completely compatible with the chart that I showed you a moment ago that says that higher end property is stronger than lower end property. This is exactly what you would expect. Now, the next topic we have here, the third topic, is deed velocity. So this is the number of deeds that are flying around without regard to the value of the real estate behind the deed. And if you look across all those 4 years, if you remember the first chart I put up here well enough, it jumped around up and down more than the deed chart does, which is to be expected. And you can see that 2020 fell off in April and May compared to what you would expect it to be. Now, about 20% of the deeds that are transferred here are the property transfers for no consideration. So, for example, if property is moving around within a family, and then the other around 80%, there's some consideration paid. Now, this is the deed volume daily. So this is from March the 17th through the end of May. I picked March 17th because that's when the governor started putting economic restrictions and depressing economic activity. There was a series of executive orders that were on both sides of March the 17th. And I picked March 17th as the start date for the repression of economic activity in North Carolina and in Wake County. And then we have these dotted lines. This shows the exponential growth line. Now, red is 2019, yellow is 2020. Not shown is 2018, but if I were to show 2018, it would be a blue line and it would sit right on top of that red line. There's no difference between red and blue. So the yellow exponential growth line shows that it's flat and slightly up. It is up, but it's up by less than what you would expect. You would expect that yellow line to be the same as the red line, the 2019 line, and you would expect it to be the same as the 2018 line, which is the same as the 2019 line. So the gap between the red and the yellow, there are two things at play here, the way I see it is. You have the restrictions are pushing down, and seasonality is trying to pull it up. The difference between those two lines is the net effect. Seasonality is pulling up, restrictions are pushing down, restrictions are winning out somewhat. And the amount of the gap, if you were to use some calculus, you could find the area between those two lines, and that would tell you how much value has been lost in this period between March 17 and May 31st. Now, let's go to lending. Lending is up super big. Lending started to go up last year in the autumn. So those high red bars on the right, that's the 2019 lending starting to just take off. And then the yellow bars are your 2020 lending, and it's sort of going through the roof. This is as people are refinancing. Interest rates were low late last year. People started taking out more loans this year. Because of the virus, the government has taken other actions. They put trillions of dollars into the economy, cut interest rates sort of to zero on your overnight rate and all, and people are refinancing like crazy. And here is another chart that shows this linearly. The previous chart is good because it takes into account seasonality. This chart does not take into account seasonality. It's here for another reason. The gray is the number of deeds of trust. That would be lending transactions involving real estate. The red is the number of deeds. When the difference between deeds of trust and deeds is small, that means that most of your lending activity has to do with property being transferred from one party to another. When the gap gets to be big, that's when you've got second mortgages and you've got refinances coming into place. So this is another way of showing what we had in the previous slide, but it helps to explain why people are taking out loans. They're not taking out loans to buy new property. This is refinances and second mortgages. And I can tell you that it's there's not much second mortgage activity in there. It's the refinances. Now, we're going to now go into the last two slides, and these are the money slides. June has zoomed way up. In the first half of June, we are getting close to being back to normal. Let's look at the box on the left first. This is the number of deeds that are being transferred. So we've got the months of March, April, May, and June this year. And if you compare those, you can see that June is up 25% from May, it's up 19% from April, it's up 5% from March, which was before things started going down. It's still down 6% from June last year. That's not too bad. May was down 19% from May last year, and April was down 12% from May last year. So being only 6% down, that's not all that bad. The other box is the dollar value of the transactions. And on this box, just like the first one, this is by day for the first 10 days in June, and then you come down and you get a total for the first half of June. You can see that June is up 51% from May. It's up 26% from April. It's down 9% from the same days in June of last year. But let's compare what May was. May compared to May 2019 was down 37%. So we've gone from 37% bad to 9% bad. And April was down 26%. So 9% doesn't look all that bad. Last slide. This shows the daily deed volume and the exponential growth curves for the most recent period, March 1st through June 12th. So this is 1.5 months. If we go all the way back to here we're starting where the governor started to shut down economic activity. If you look over on the left, you'll see that the yellow exponential line and the red exponential line start from the same place. This is because back on March the 16th, nothing bad had happened yet. Then things start to diverge. Here you can see that the yellow exponential growth curve starts out below, which is exactly where it's supposed to be, because the chart that I just showed you, a gap developed. So on the left, that's that gap that has developed. What we're seeing here is that 2020 is now growing faster than 2019, and it's not shown on this chart, but also 2018. So that if the current trends continue, and there's no guarantee that they will, I absolutely positively do not guarantee that they will, it means that it's over at the end of June. The yellow line is going to hit the red line at the end of June, and that based on what is happening right this minute, first half of June, if that continues, that means by the end of June, the rate will be back to normal. It'll mean that June will still be down because the first half of June, there's a gap. And for all of June, the projection says that there's a gap. But when you start January 1st, not January 1st, July 1st, that gap will be gone. So it's possible that July of this year will not be down. As a matter of fact, mathematically, the data says it will not be down if you assume, which you should not necessarily do, but if you assume that the data holds, then mathematically July of this year will be no worse or better than July of next year. So that's my data. And the end of what I needed to tell you.
If you don't mind hanging around, we'll see if anyone has questions for you.
Yeah,
Please
sure.
text any questions you have in the chat box. I do have a few for our previous speakers that I'll start with those. The first question is from Pamela Fox, and this question is for Robin. So if our speakers could go ahead and unmute. Robin, you gave a list of things. Number 1, reserves. Number 2, low loan to value. Number 3, cash flow. What was number 4? Sorry, I missed it.
Okay, number 4, let me think. Number 4 would have been to make sure that you look at rental properties that pay off quickly. Something where you can take the extra cash flow and apply it to principal and then have that compound interest savings. The compound interest savings was number 4.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Mike. And this question is from Allison Slady. Mike said he was buying property owner finance at 0 interest. Can you explain that? How is that possible?
Well, first of all, you have to find properties that are free and clear or pretty close to free and clear. And a lot of times they're going to be out-of-state owners, tired landlords, and they're not as concerned about getting the cash as they are getting a fair price for the property. And just make them the offers. Usually when I make my offers, I'm making multiple offers. So I'm running the numbers and I'm using the exact formula that Robin was talking about, that 70% male formula. So I always make that offer, but then I also give them an alternative option of much higher price. And if they take the payments over time, but that's based on a 0% interest rate. And then I let them choose. And then, so I give them usually 2 or 3 different options and let them choose. They don't always choose it, but at least I'm giving them the option. And every now and then they do.
Great, thank you, Mike. As of right now, I have 4 questions for Robin and 2 questions for Charles. If you have more, please text them in. So Robin, this is from Tiana. Do you have Airbnb in big cities or small towns? Is there profit in both areas or maybe just vacation areas?
Okay, I have them in both. I have Branson, Missouri, which is one of the vacation capitals of the world. That little town's got over 100 shows a night. So that was definitely vacation stuff. Now, I also have 4 VRs, vacation rentals, in Ocala, Florida, which is, I want to say, out in the boonies. One of my houses is 12 miles from the closest grocery store or restaurant, but it is around the horse show. What you need to make sure you understand is the best vacation rentals sometimes are not where you think. They're not Aruba on the beach. They're not Grand Cayman, because the cost of those are so expensive that what you get per night, it takes 20 nights or so to cover it. The best ones are located next to a hospital, especially any hospital that does cancer treatments or heart transplant or any kind of transplants, because you're looking for the long stays. I mean, one of my houses right now has a tenant in it for 3 months, and they paid $129 a month for 3 months. That's what keeps your vacancy rate really low. And your revenue really high. So close to sporting events is great, close to national parks are great, close to hospitals are good. Anything that attracts folks, universities, military bases, those are all great places to have vacation rentals.
Okay, and what do you recommend as far as a good loan to value ratio prior to a refinance? That's from Jamaica Jackson.
I would not refinance. I would really try not to. The thing that I hate about somebody refinancing, they start that 30-year interest clock all over again. And what most students don't understand is when you take a 30-year mortgage, the first payment is all interest and nothing to principal. The second payment is 99% interest, 1% principal. When you refinance, you start that all over again. So if you've been paying a loan for 5 or 10 years, you're really starting to get to the point you build serious equity every time you make a payment. So I really hate to see anybody refinance unless you absolutely have to. I mean, if you need the money to make groceries, okay, but otherwise leave the equity alone.
Okay, regarding short-term rentals, do you have any additional measures or precautions for renters due to COVID?
Yeah, I think the part of the thing you got to realize is if you are going to do short-term vacation rentals, you understand what we just went through. 90% of your reservations canceled. So you better have at least 2 or 3 months in reserves to make your mortgage payments without having vacationers come. What I can tell you, I think you should also buy your vacation rentals with a backup strategy that you could rent them monthly, like for a year, and use normal tenants. And if it cash flows doing it that way, that you've got a second exit strategy, I think you should always plan on that. The one thing you got to be careful of is buying houses to vacation rental in a subdivision with HOAs, and you got to make sure the HOAs are okay with it, and the HOA can change their mind at any point in time. So most of my vacation rentals are either in a subdivision that is a vacation rental subdivision, or I'm in a position where the house has no HOA whatsoever. So you got to know your rules.
Great points. Robin, Sharif Hassan wants to know, when is your next class, and are you still doing the Ocala intensive course, and if so, when?
The Ocala Junkers class is happening in July as scheduled. My next intensive class will be for Chuck in January. And Chuck, do you have your dates in front of you?
We'll
yeah, let me
we'll
take just the
We'll tell
third
you that at the
Tuesday.
end, y'all. We'll let Chuck look that up.
Yeah, so that'll be the next time that I'm actually doing the intensive in North Carolina.
Okay, for Charles, we have Ronald Payne. And Ronald, I will tell you that before I ask your question, that this meeting has been recorded and will be available on the TREIA website. But Charles, Ronald is asking, could he get a copy of your charts anywhere?
Everything except the last 2 pages, you can just do a search and find me on the internet, Wake Register of Deeds, and you look at our homepage, you look at the bottom, and there's a list of news releases. So all of that and more is there. Insofar as the last 2 pages go, I'll mail this slideshow to the meeting leader, and the meeting leader can do whatever is appropriate for your group with them, including if you want to mail them out to all the members, fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Someone who
Kathy?
does not have their full name typed in here is asking, we are still in the middle of June. At the end of June, would the sale in June 2020 be better than June 2019? Want me to read it again? It was a little hard to understand.
This is for me, Charles Gillum.
Yes. We're still in the middle of June.
I have it. The month of June on current trends will be lower than the month of June 2019, both in dollar amount and velocity of transactions. But the amount that it will be lower will be substantially less low, if that makes sense. I sort of hate to say less low, but it'll be less low than May and April. It'll be substantially less low than May or April.
Closing the gap.
Yeah.
Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah, the Robin's meeting in January will be the 3rd Tuesday, which is the 19th. It'll be at Prestonwood Country Club. And then she'll follow that up. I think, Robin, didn't we say we were going to go out 2 weeks for your weekend, the 30th and 31st?
Okay, so y'all, it's our main meeting in January, which is always the 3rd Tuesday of the month. That's when Robin will be here, assuming, of course, that we're having main meetings by then. Another question for you, Robin, from Sheila Waldrop. What are your thoughts on apartment rentals, say near business parks?
I don't do apartments. I would not be the right person to ask for that. Commercial to me has always been the hardest stuff to sell, especially if you're in bad economic times. So I have stayed away from all that.
Okay, I have one more question, and then we'll wrap things up here. This question does not say who it's to. So I guess if any one of our speakers would like to jump on this, feel free. I've asked them, Pamela Fox, who she asked this to, but she hasn't answered me. I'm ready to invest, but have low cash. Would you recommend a cash out refi of an investment property versus withdrawing from a 401k, not feeling confident of finding owner financing?
Never withdraw from your 401k. That's the only thing I'll say. The first part of the question somebody else can answer.
Amen. But you can use your 401k and buy with it. If you don't know about that, there are plenty of classes out there on it. Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Why not get a partner? Share some of the equity, and in return, they bring some cash. And who knows, you might learn something and make a great new long-term friend.
Wholesale.
Yeah, I was gonna say wholesale it.
All right. See y'all.
It's too big of a question to answer specifically.
That's called having tools in your toolbox, everyone. And in a matter of fact, the way that that question was answered by Robert is a great note to end on. We don't have any more questions, but what Robert said is a very, very important reason for your TREIA membership. So you've joined, you're here at meetings, you're coming to meetings, you're coming to subgroups. That's great. But you know what? That's not enough. And you need to take advantage of your TREIA membership. How do you do that? Well, in normal times, you come to meetings, you network, you'll find your forever financial friend because you'll meet hard money lenders and wholesalers and rehabbers, and they will all help you. And you will meet partners to do deals with, and you will meet lenders to borrow money from. Unfortunately, right now we're stuck with Zoom meetings, but what you need to do is come to as many as possible. Get known to your fellow members. Make a member spotlight, just like the ones you saw here tonight. Send an email to TREIAprojects@gmail.com, and we will feature you. Another way you can network right now is on our Facebook networking page, Triangle Real Estate Investors Association networking page. Go there. It's super active. People are posting deals every day. People are needing roofers, lenders, partners, you name it. So do a video. We will introduce you to our members. Get active on our networking sites. Get involved. You can volunteer for TREIA. You know what? As much as you want to be involved, we want you. We are trying to develop programs catered to your needs. So tell us what you want. We have mentoring programs in the works. We have new classes in the works. This is stuff we've been working on for 3 years. The reason that we changed our structure is to be able to serve you better. So you know what? Now that you're here, great. But take advantage of this membership. It's all about what you make it. And that ties in perfectly with Robert's answer. So I'm just going to ask any of our board members if they have any announcements or things they'd like to say before we tell you all good night. Jackie, Chuck, Leslie. And we also have Crystal Slater here tonight as a board member. Y'all, that's another thing. Get to know your board members. Get involved in TREIA. If no one has any announcements, I will say thank you again so much to our speakers. Thank you, Robin. Your information is always so valuable. Thank you, Mike. For y'all, every time you go on the TREIA website, you can thank Mike. Every time you have a problem on there, Mike is who I go to.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Robert is a great, great REIA leader out of Nashville and a super experienced investor. And of course, the Register of Deeds in Wake County here, that information was awesome. Once again, within a week, this video will be posted on our website. You just go to the calendar, click on the date of this meeting, scroll down, you can watch the whole things. And as you heard Mr. Gilliam say, he will also share those slides so we can get them to you if you'd like them in a different format. Thank you so much. I'm just getting a lot, to all the speakers, I'm getting a lot of texts here just saying, thank you, good job, thanks so much.
Great meeting.
So thank you all once again. Thank everyone else for being here, and I'm going to end this meeting. Have a great night, all.
Good night.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.